Okay, here we are with chapter 41, Old Books and New Stories. A week later, just before Thanksgiving, Stella's classroom buzzed. A large box of books had just been donated to Riverside from Mountain View School. And if you remember, Mountain View School was the white school. Tony, his bruises nearly healed, and had insisted that he would help to carry the box into the center of the room. It was huge, and Stella could hardly imagine how many books were in there. Excited, she picked out the first book, but she grew quiet as she saw how raggedy it was. The binding, frayed, even missing pages. "I guess the Mountain View children got new books," she murmured. Jojo, whose cough had finally faded, leaned over and picked up another book out of the pile. "Oh, brother," he said with dismay, "this one's got scribbles all through it." "What should we do with it?" Carolyn asked Mrs. Grayson, who was cutting out a paper feather for her turkey art project. She sighed. "Let's make a pile of all of the ones that can't be used. We can at least use them for some kindling." "Look here, though, a bunch of Hardy Boys books," Tony exclaimed, pulling out a stack of the books. "There's even a couple I haven't read yet." "You see any Nancy Drews in there?" Stella asked, her excitement returning. Tony dug a bit deeper. "Nope," he said. "Most of what's in here is, he paused and opened the book in his hand. "Outdated textbooks. Publication date on this one is 1919. Gee." He tossed it in the back of the box. Stella's heart sank for a while, for the second time as she glanced out the window. The sky was like liquid steel. Heavy rain pelted against the tin roof of the school building. It was as if the weather was mimicking her own mood. A knock on the schoolhouse door broke up her dark thoughts. It was unusual for anyone to come in the middle of the day. Mrs. Grayson swung it open to find Mr. Stinson, the postal delivery man, standing there, water dripping from the wide-brimmed hat and dark gray rain slicker that he wore. "Mornin'," he said, touching his brim. Come in, Mr. Stinson, and get dry by the stove for a minute." "That's mighty kind of you," he replied. "Too bad I can't bring in old Clyde," he joked, stepping in front of the pot-bellied stove. "He's not loving this weather one whit." Jojo, out of his seat once more, asked, "You like delivering the mail?" Mr. Stinson placed a medium-sized brown paper package on the floor, peeled off his coat, and nodded. "Yep, I truly do, son. I'm probably the only person around here who knows just about everybody in Bumblebee." "My mama loves when you bring us the Sears catalog," Claudia told him shyly. "Me too. My bag gets pretty heavy on catalog days and around Christmas time, I guess." "Don't you hate getting wet?" Randy asked. "It comes with the job, son, but most days, me and Clyde, we just like to take our time and enjoy whatever weather we get." He held his hands out towards the warmth. Stella eyed the package. "We hardly ever get mail delivered to the school." "Must be a special occasion then," Mr. Stinson replied with a wink. "Y'all want to know something? I dropped a full box full of shiny new textbooks to Mountain School earlier this morning. But they didn't give me the royal warm-up treatment like you all. No sirree." He picked the parcel back up and handed it to Mrs. Grayson. "Thank you," she said, fingering the twine, circling it. I've been waiting for this." The postman wiggled his fingers in front of the fire once more, then picked up his coat. "Well, I suppose I best be on my way. I ain't got no more hankering to do and interrupt any more learning." With that, he put his hat on, opened the door, and disappeared into the rainy morning. Is it what I think it is?" Carolyn asked, hovering beside Mrs. Grayson. "It's simply the mail, that is all. Now sit down, Carolyn. In fact, everyone, go back to your desks," Mrs. Grayson said firmly. Stella gnawed on her pencil as Mrs. Grayson put on her reading glasses, slid away the twine from the package, and snapped the wrapping open. One typed sheet of paper and several newspapers fell out. They looked like the Carolina Times. Stella watched the teacher read the letter, then pick up one of the newspapers. Mrs. Grayson read each page with careful deliberation, even stopping to take notes on an article she seemed to like. She allowed a hint of a smile to show on her face as she turned the last page of the paper. Even though she knew she was not part of this competition, Stella switched the chewing of her fingernails. She glanced at Carolyn with a smile, with what she hoped was a look of encouragement. Finally, to Stella's immense relief, Mrs. Grayson looked up and took off her glasses. "Class, I have an announcement to make," she called out. But she hadn't needed to. Every one of Stella's classmates had been watching their teacher just as closely as she had. "So, do you have the contest results?" Tony asked, the question that screamed in everyone's head. Mrs. Grayson smiled broadly. "I have some good news. Something that honors us all." "So what did they say?" Carolyn asked, raising her eyebrows at Stella. "Here, I'll read you the letter." Mrs. Grayson replied, the corners of her eyes crinkling with pleasure. "Dear Madam," she began, "we would like to thank you for submitting the writings from your classroom. We feel that it is vitally important to support our Negro children in their educational endeavors. So, after reading the selections from the Negro schools all over North Carolina, we are pleased to announce that one of the winning contestants is from Riverside School." Mrs. Grayson paused. The only sound was the steady patter of the rain on the tin roof. "Why am I nervous?" Stella thought. "My essay wasn't even good enough to send in." Mrs. Grayson continued. "The winning piece for the entire state is awarded a cash prize of $25 and a publication of the story." Stella bit her pencil so hard it snapped right in half. $25? Oh, how Papa could have used that money. "And first prize this year goes to," the teacher paused again, beaming, "Helen Spencer, for her delightful story, Bucky and the Beaver." Helen shrieked with joy. The class hooted with celebration. Stella looked over at Carolyn, who shrugged, and then they both stood up and led the class in an extra cheers for Helen. "Wait, there's more," Mrs. Grayson said, shushing them. "Thank you for letting us share her story. Please tell her parents that they should be very proud of Helen. We are enclosing several copies of the Carolina Times to share with families in Bumblebee community. Again, congratulations." Stella blinked. She truly was glad that Helen would get the prize money. Her family needed it for sure. So, why did she feel so low?